watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're listening to A Pirate's Life for Me on The Sports Objective. Join us every Friday at noon as we catch up with a member of Pirate Nation. Here's your host, Bubba Rosenbaum.
What is going on, Pirate Nation? Welcome into another edition of A Pirate's Life for Me. It's our first episode in about a month. The last episode of this program, we caught up with former East Carolina defensive lineman Alex Turner, who is out in med school in the state of Texas, back in his home state, doing great things. So definitely go back and check that episode out. Today, we're actually talking to a lifelong Pirate fan and someone who has 2 degrees from East Carolina University and has several family members as well who graduated from ECU. Welcome to the show, Zach Daugherty. Zach, we appreciate your time.
Hey, brother. Thank you for having me. Been looking forward to this for a while now. Thanks. So glad we were able to get around to it.
Yeah, no doubt. We're finally able to coordinate our schedules. We thought we had it worked out on a few occasions going back several months, but I'm glad that it's finally happening. And, we're right here a little less than 4 weeks from East Carolina football, and the first week of practice is in the books. Things going well, and certainly a stout test right out of the gates going to the big house. And I know you're making that trip, as am I, to watch the Pirates and the top 5 Wolverines.
Yeah, man, that's going to be a great trip. I've had that one circled on the calendar for quite a while. I actually told my wife whenever we first started dating, I said, look, I've got some plans the first weekend of September in 2023. I'm going to be in Ann Arbor. You're more than welcome to be with me, but I will be there. So here we are.
No doubt. I love it, setting the tone. She knew or found out exactly, how diehard of a Pirate you are. And, look forward to that trip. Kind of a bucket list venue, as you say, 100,000+ there at Michigan Stadium. And we'll kind of circle back to that later in the conversation. But right off the bat, as you see there on the screen for our viewers, you're a 2012 undergrad from East Carolina, but then also M.B.A. in 2015. So just talk about, your love of the Pirates. And I know it goes well back beyond your years as a student to your childhood.
Yeah, for as long as I can remember, I've been donning purple and gold, especially on Saturdays, and making that trip up to Greenville from Jacksonville, North Carolina. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, and my grandfather just was always carrying me up to Greenville, whether it was for football, basketball, baseball, you name it. And it seemed like it was almost written in stone that even though he had 9 grandchildren, I was the only one to go. But I think that one was, like I said, set in stone for a while. And nobody was surprised whenever I announced I was going to be going to ECU. But, yeah, started in 2007, took a victory lap because, like I always tell people, graduating in 4 years is like leaving a party at midnight. Got out in 2012, worked for a year down in Charleston, and came back. I had so much fun that I had to do another tour of duty from 2013 to 2015 and got my M.B.A.
Going back to your childhood memories, like you were mentioning a few minutes ago off the air, it really goes back beyond what you can remember, and kind of like myself. But, what are your earliest memories of East Carolina football and other sports?
Yeah, so really whenever I started actually, diving into it and paying attention to it was right there before David Grad came in. And what a time to become, a true diehard, bleeding purple and gold fan, because there were some awesome games that we experienced. And I'm sure you were there. And that was obviously before the Murphy Center in the end zone and before the horseshoe was closed in. Big games, you'd bring in temporary bleachers. And, it's not one of the earliest memories that I've got, but definitely by far one of my favorite memories was whenever I was a freshman in high school. My grandfather was president of the Pirate Club back in those days in the early 2000s. And in those days, John Thompson was the coach, and those are some rough years, but they used to take Pirate Club executives and big members in the Pirate Club and their spouse or somebody close to them. They'd take them to one away game a year. And my grandmother wasn't able to make it with my grandfather. So they asked me if I wanted to go to Memphis. And so my grandfather picked me up from school, and we flew with the team on the plane out to Memphis. Got to hang out with the team. We went to the Civil Rights Museum, where MLK was shot, and then went out to the rendezvous with quite a few people that made the trip with us. And it was just one of those experiences that I'll never forget. It was really special to me just because of how close that I was with my grandfather.
Yeah, definitely remember Memphis in those years. D'Angelo Williams.
Yeah, man. It was that was a fun show to watch. Even though we were on the raw end of the stick with them, but yeah, what a fun time.
Yeah, Kyle Barber and I were actually discussing the Memphis Tigers here recently, just because we were doing an interview with a beat writer from UTSA and just talking about some of the scheduling within the American and how it's a shame that East Carolina and Memphis, given their history and playing most years over the last 30 plus years, that's not going to be happening for the next few.
Yeah, that's one of those rivalries where you kind of take it for granted until it's, I don't want to say gone, but like you said, we're not going to be playing them every year. I mean, obviously the last few years, there's been some really exciting games. Fortunately, we've been able to come out on top, but yeah, I kind of compare it to the old Southern Miss rivalry. You hated playing those guys whenever they came to town, and you knew they were going to give you fits. But at the same time, it's one of those healthy rivalries that you're going to get a good game regardless of the records.
You referenced David Grad, and that was there during, I guess, your middle school, high school years, and one of his teammates and one of the best running backs in East Carolina history, Leonard Henry, Jamie Wilson from right there in Greenville. But who were some of your favorite players during those years, during your earliest memories of being a Pirate?
Oh man, yeah. So definitely Leonard Henry. I'd say Pernell Griffith was one, and Keith Stokes by far was probably my favorite. He always had the opportunity to do something special. I think it was, and I could be mistaken because that was so long ago, but there's a bowl game that they played in. I think it was against Texas Tech, and it was on my birthday one year. And I wasn't able to make it to that game, but I think Keith Stokes took a punt back to the house for that one, and I was just losing my mind.
Yep, galleryfurniture.com.
Yeah.
Goal.
That was it.
Pirates had a first half for the ages, and really jumped on Texas Tech, I think something like 34-7, and then hung on for a 41-27 victory. Ruff and McNeil was, of course, on Mike Leach's staff during that game back in 2000. But yeah, you're right. Keith Stokes had a big game. I remember that return that he took to the house. And
he was electric, man. And
were you at the game in Charlotte?
I'm sorry, say again.
West Virginia. Were you at the game against West Virginia in 1999?
I was not. So like I said, I played a lot of soccer growing up, so I was unable to be at that one. So there were some big ones whenever I was growing up that I had to miss. I haven't told many people this one, but that Miami game, I was supposed to go, and I had my ticket, and we were going to go up to Carter Finley, and I forgot what I had done. But I had gotten in trouble at home, and my stepmom knew how badly I wanted to go to that game, and she grounded me. She said I couldn't go to that game, and I sat there and watched it, and I was almost in tears. And I looked at her, and I said, "I was supposed to be there. I could be doing this right now." So
she knew she had to hit you where it hurt the most, right?
Oh man, and she did. That's one of those. it's long lasting. That was 20 years ago. And here I am, 15 years ago, here I am. God, no, that was 25 years ago. Lord.
Yeah. Talk about an uppercut to the gut.
Yeah. I mean, I still, wake up in night sweats thinking about it, how much fun it would have been.
Yeah, it was that, because I was there. That was my senior year of high school, and I was actually on an unofficial visit as a recruit for that game, but certainly still decked out in my purple and gold. And I was just glad, as many folks were, that NC State stepped up and they allowed us to use Carter Finley Stadium, and that the game was able to be played after the disaster that was Eastern North Carolina following Hurricane Floyd.
Yeah, man. It obviously, again, being from Eastern North Carolina, it was a huge morale booster that was needed. There's just so much stress, anxiety from people who didn't know what the next day was going to bring, and that was, you see the stories about it, but that was just an outlet for people for a day or two where they could forget about everything else going on in life. And it sounds cliche to say that, but it really was. Everybody kind of just dropped what they were doing and said, let's watch the Pirates play. And what a story it was.
And obviously that was a flood of such epic proportions. So not to go too far down that road, but from someone like yourself who grew up in Eastern North Carolina, you were there in Jacksonville. What can you tell us? What are your memories of that flood?
Well, fortunately, Jacksonville didn't get it too bad, but I remember in the weeks following that game, or excuse me, that storm, we'd be driving up, especially through Pollocksville and Vanceboro, passing the College of Knowledge over in Vanceboro. You could see the water line and where it had been up to and receded, and it's very humbling. Even though I was young at the time, what was that, 99? So I would have been 10, 11 years old. It was just very humbling to know at such a young age what nature was capable of. That's all I got to say on that one.
And the vibe at that game, even though the first half was very ugly, and we were down 20-3, and then trailed 23-3 early in the second half before you score 24 unanswered to win the game the way we did on that touchdown pass to Keith Stokes, where David Grad quickly found him on a screen pass and a hot read there when Miami was bringing pressure. But there's kind of an interesting vibe, because even though we were down 20 points, I felt like if we stopped shooting ourselves in the foot, that we could come back and win the game, which we did.
Yeah, it was one of those. Steve Logan, he always had that chip on his shoulder, and we've seen some coaches with the fire in their eyes, like he had. I think Coach Houston is about the closest thing that we've had. But whenever Steve Logan was coaching, and it was in that era with David Garrard, you were never out of a game. I think as Pirates, we get down and it's like, oh, we're never out of this. But then at the same time, you've been an East Carolina fan long enough, that if we got a 20-point lead, we're also not comfortable with that. So
not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, man, it was one of those things where you just knew if we caught a couple breaks, we'd get the momentum, because I don't want to say every, but just about every seat in that stadium was going for the Pirates, and all they needed was that tide to swing, and obviously look back now at what it was.
Yeah, we've had both players on that team and former players who were at the game, like the Hart twins, and talk about Coach Logan didn't say a whole lot at halftime. He knew that we had shot ourselves in the foot in the first half, and he just opened up the locker room doors. We've heard Jeff Carr talk about it. We've heard, like I mentioned, Darren and David Hart, who had just exhausted their eligibility a few seasons prior, and were there at Carter Finley that night. They came in, as well as some of their former teammates, and gave some words of encouragement and a little bit of a pep talk to the 99 Pirates. And the crowd, to be down 17 points, I mean, you would have thought it's almost like we were up 17 the way the crowd was acting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What a game.
But moving on from that, going into your years as a student, obviously that was right when Skip Holtz was really getting things rolling after the dismal John Thompson era that you referenced. So in 2005, we really started to play better football on the brink of going to a bowl, and then obviously from that point on, it was being in contention for championships and then winning two.
Yeah, so I guess it was my senior year of high school. We beat State in Raleigh. Oh my gosh! And I think Andre Allison was a receiver back then, I believe. And it just got me fired up.
Yeah, that big touchdown right before halftime.
Oh man, I think about it all the time. I was not at that game. I was playing high school soccer at the time, and I think we had a game that night. But that was just one of those where I'll always remember it. And anyways, senior year of high school, they went to the Birmingham Bowl. I believe that's whenever they lost to South Florida. But it was one of those, it's like, all right, going in, we got the momentum going our way. First game of freshman year, I lived at Aycock dorm, and first game of the year was Carolina, and I loathe UNC. I mean, I absolutely hate those guys. And we went out, my roommate and I, he had been my best friend since first grade. We went all through high school together, played soccer, but we went and we tailgated that game, and Ben Hartman kicked that walk-off kick, and that just set the tone. What an awesome introduction to Pirate football as a student. Had a good season that year. Sophomore year came back, and we made the trek up to Virginia Tech to Charlotte against Virginia Tech. First week, shocked the world with that block punt, and man, I still get chills thinking about it. And I'm sure you do too, but I pulled up that video quite often and just get jacked up watching it. And then obviously come back to Greenville. It's your first week back to school. You party, you rage, and you see West Virginia on the schedule. It's like, man, how awesome would it be if we were able to pull off another one next weekend? And lo and behold, what do we do? 24-3. And that was one of the best nights that I ever had in Greenville. I mean, we had a keg. We had anybody that could fit in our apartment was there. Camped out. Let's see, I think the week after that was Tulane, or it might have been 2 weeks later, and that's whenever was it Quentin Cotton that got hurt? And
and then I was unable to attend, but my dad was there for that game down in the Superdome, and Quentin Cotton went down. We get the big touchdown pass to Jamar Bryant to pull it out, but that kind of put a little bit of a damper on things.
Yeah, man. So obviously Nick Johnson had to switch from line to play linebacker, and had camped out for NC State tickets, and back to that gut punch that you talked about. That was a brutal loss. 4 downs from inside the 5-yard line to potentially win it, and the Pirates just let me down that time. But yeah, man, we won a couple of conference championships whenever I was in school. One out in Tulsa, and then the game obviously in Daugherty Ficklin against Case Keenum and the Houston Cougars. But what a great tenure to have been there. And then my little sister actually went to East Carolina during the Scotty Moe tenure, and she had seen me having so much fun, and how good football was during my time there. And then obviously she gets there, and woof, what a 180 it had done.
Yeah, that's a topic I'll come back to in a moment, as far as young grads and students during all those years where so little success was had. But you talk about the Liberty Bowl and the Conference USA championships. So obviously you had Chris Johnson, but who were some of your perhaps even friends, and because you were a student during those times. But who were some of your favorite players from those Holtz years and championship teams in early Ruff and McNeil years?
Yeah, so CJ Wilson was an awesome dude. He was one of those guys. I wouldn't say I was friends with him, but would run into him all the time at the rec center, and he was just the most personable guy. He'd sit and talk to you, and even years after he graduated, he'd sit there and have a conversation with you like he was just a regular old Joe, and that's how he wanted to be treated. So he was cool. Obviously, Dwayne Harris, he hung out with a few guys that I worked with over at the rec center, so it was kind of cool to have that connection. I'd say those were probably the my favorite players. I think Dwayne is one of those where it's you hear it all the time, but man, he was special, and especially in that system, you never knew whenever he was going to break one.
Definitely not, and it could happen at any time. And he's kind of from that same mold. I know I'm going back beyond your probably recollection here, and as I'm a little bit older, but Morris Foreman. I mean, he's a lot like Morris Foreman as far as just being a pure football player. Not the fastest guy, but just extremely tough. And Morris Foreman was more, on the defensive side of the ball, whereas Dwayne was a receiver / running back. But
some guys just have a nose for it, man. And Dwayne, like you said, he wasn't the fastest guy, but he was quick and he was slippery. So he had a knack for making guys miss, and it was just so fun to watch him. And he'd be in the backfield on those patented bubble screens, and you'd think he was going down for a loss of 5, and all of a sudden he busts it for 30.
Yeah, wasn't the fastest guy, but he very rarely got caught from behind either.
Right.
I think to the long scoring play he had out at UTEP, as well as others.
Oh man, speaking of UTEP, how about that game where Rob Cass came in and
my dad and some of his friends were there for that Miracle in the Mine Shaft. I was coaching high school football at the time, so I couldn't go.
I was down. We were visiting a buddy of mine, and God, I think that was my freshman year at ECU, and we had a buddy that went to the Citadel, and he had invited us down there, and we said, well, there's an away game that weekend. Obviously, being broke college kids, the thought of going to the game never even crossed our minds, being out in El Paso. But I was following it on my phone, and obviously back then we didn't have ESPN Plus. So it's one of those, I had the ESPN app open, just refreshing every 30 seconds, and, you come back and win that. So what a game. And somebody was able to pull it up on the TV there in the last couple minutes. So we're sitting there, hadn't seen our buddy in 6 months because he had to report early. And that was one of those memories that, again, you'll never forget.
So, obviously, after you graduated over the last decade plus, talk about what are some of your top memories? I know you're constantly there, whether it's at Daugherty Ficklin or making several road trips as well. So, going through the Ruff and McNeil years, and then, like you said, a lot of dark times after that.
Yeah, man. So, I graduated in 12, and I typically I did at least before COVID, obviously that changed the world, but I would always try to go to as many road games as possible, at least 1 or 2 a year. The Sugar Shane years, we went out to Columbia and saw Shane Carden and Justin Hardy establish that connection. Obviously, Carden came in late that game, but just seeing everything start to form there. Went out to Charlotte, and there's so many stories from going out to Charlotte and watching them play South Carolina there. Whenever Garcia came back in the second half and led South Carolina to a comeback. But I just hate that we had, and I'm sorry to get on this topic, but, I hate that we had so much momentum going, and, this has nothing to do with Ruff and McNeil, but you have so much momentum as a program. And then, Jeff Comfort comes in, and I truly think that he set our program back at least a decade, if not 15 years. I've got my thoughts, my stance on the decision to let go of Ruffin. But at the end of the day, whenever you're going to let a coach go, you got to have somebody waiting in the wings. And man, Comfort really fumbled the ball. And if you want to get into it, we'll get into it. But that I just hate that it all happened during conference realignment. You really think, man, had we even been able to get 6-6 seasons, 7-5 seasons, you wonder what might have been, where we might be at today. That's
like you're saying. It seems as though going back through the years, even back to the late '80s and early '90s, when we had that magical '91 season, it was just a year or two too late, and as far as allowing the Pirates to potentially reap the benefits of going to the Big East. Because I know Dave Hart, I've heard said that. Although during those years I was around 10 years old, but going to games with my dad and other loyal Pirate Club members who were fairly high ranking, and you would be exposed to certain things, and where they had conversations with the administration and so forth, where after that '91 season or during those years, and we actually had a SEC representative on campus. I know a lot of folks wouldn't believe that, but it's true.
That doesn't shock me. Obviously, I was born in '88, so I don't quite remember that 91 season. I do know that my parents didn't take me to the bowl game because, according to them, I was too young for it. But I still kind of give them flack for that. But anyways, I just hate that. Really, there was so much passion. On a weekly basis, we were filling that stadium. And obviously, you combine the Comfort era with the fact that on the back end, you had COVID. So even whenever he was out, you had COVID. So that restricted us from being able to get people and into the stadium and kind of get folks rallied around it. But I think Coach Houston's done a fantastic job. He's got that fire. He's got that chip on his shoulder. And I really hope that he's able to get us back to that level. And I think he's got us on the right path. It's just one of those, we got to get the fan base truly back, because we've had some great showings the last couple years, for the big games, but man, it didn't even have to be a big game back then to fill out the stadium. And now it's tough to get 45,000 people in there unless it's a big name.
Yeah, that's a kind of a good segue. That's a kind of a direction I wanted to steer this conversation. Is we've talked about it on the show ad nauseum. We've beat a dead horse, and I know we're probably largely preaching in the choir for the folks who are tuned into this podcast. But they may know folks, who are not part of that choir, so to speak, and who are a little bit more of a casual Pirate fan, or maybe had at one time been a more loyal supporter, but for one reason or another, not as much, be it the disappointment on the field during the Scotty Moe years or what have you. But you take a look at this year's schedule. Sure, it doesn't have some of the names like a Virginia Tech or an NC State, North Carolina, and some of those regional opponents that Pirate fans love to see. But you have the Sugar Bowl champion. Sugar Bowl. You have the Cotton Bowl champion in Tulane, and you also have some other appeal there, even though it's not what Pirate fans like to see.
Yeah, and you talk about being a dead horse. You can't choose who you play. Obviously there's only 4 games a year that you can, and you want to do it to where it gives you the best opportunity to make a bowl game. That Tulane team that's coming in is going to be fun to watch. I hope, even though they lost quite a bit of talent, but what a Cotton Bowl game that was. I was working on a project out in the garage, and that was so fun to watch. And especially, knowing where Tulane started from, the last, we'll call it 20 years, they really haven't had that much success in their program. And, to be able and go down and take out Goliath like that. What a fun game. But, I get it. I totally relate to those folks that say, man, Charlotte doesn't really do a lot for me on the interest meter. Gardner-Webb doesn't do a lot for me. Why would I choose to spend my weekend going and doing that whenever I could do something, with my family or, something else and just tune into the TV. However, my rebuttal to that is, look, we had 6 years of doing that. Time for that, I think is over. Because I'll tell you, in the down years for my mental sanity, I had to kind of take a break and pick and choose which games I went to. But, I made a promise and I said, look, whenever Coach Houston gets this ship turned around, I'm going to do my part. And, ever since, I guess it was 3 years ago, I've upped my pledge in the Pirate Club on a yearly basis. Now, I'm not saying I'm giving tens of thousands of dollars more, but every little bit counts, especially with a program like East Carolina. We need to show the world what we're capable of. And everybody always talks about how passionate our fan base is. It's time for us to put our money where our mouth is and start showing up on Saturdays. Because, I get that it's nice to have somebody to give you free tickets whenever they're there, but man, make that contribution. Join the Pirate Club. It's minimum $100 a year. I believe is what the bottom giving level is. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you can get, a big group of people to give a little bit of money, that does a world of difference. I'll get up on my soapbox here. You search the message boards and everybody's always asking, oh, well, we need McMahon to give money. We need Sandra Bullock to give money, all these people to give money. Why limit yourself to 3 people to give big, generous donations whenever we've got so much passion in this fan base? It doesn't matter where you go in the world. If you wear an East Carolina t-shirt, there's a good chance that either walking through the airport or walking through whatever city you're in, you'll get a purple gold. And I just think that Pirate Nation, especially, you look at Twitter, oh, hey, Pirate Nation, we need your support. People always give it. Why can't we do that with the athletics program? Now's the time to do it, because we are in such a critical time, especially with the dominoes that are falling in collegiate athletics right now. Now's the time to show the world how special we can be.
No doubt. As far as, when you wear the purple and gold, and you always seem to have that East Carolina connection when you're traveling. And my son and I, here a month ago, we were up at Yankee Stadium for a Yankees-Cubs game and had on my Pirate gear, and somebody hollers, "Go Pirates" on the concourse. And then the next day we're at Fenway Park and somebody says, "Hey, ECU." And so
that's right, man. It's everywhere. We're gonna be going to the I think I texted you this, but we're going to the Tigers and Yankees game the Thursday before the game in Ann Arbor, and you can bet your butt I'll be wearing an East Carolina shirt. I wear that anytime I'm out of town. I always make sure to pack a couple East Carolina shirts.
Likewise, people often tell me that I'm a walking billboard and ask me, hey, is somebody paying you?
They really need to start giving us some royalties, man.
You're always in purple and gold. I said, nah. I just love the Pirates.
Yep, absolutely. Anytime I'm in Greenville, I always go to UBE and Daugherty and all that, and check out the new shirts. My wife's like, "Man, you just got a new polo." Well, relax. I need another one. There's never a limit on the amount of purple that you can have in your wardrobe.
No doubt. But kind of shifting gears to the Pirate Club, or we're already going down that path. You referenced your grandfather's heavy involvement with the ECU Pirate Club. So, just wanted to get your thoughts. I know you graduated a little over a decade ago, and maybe some things have changed, but I just feel like in having this conversation with some of our aging fan base, people that have been in the Pirate Club and giving loyally and significantly, and I'm that's certainly not to say that any gifts insignificant, but I'm talking about people that have been giving, 5+ figures for a long time. Hearing some of their thoughts, and just it doesn't seem like we've necessarily cultivated some of our young grads and doing things to appeal to them. Um, Season tickets sales are certainly not anywhere close to where they once were when we sold 23,000 or so a decade plus ago. But at the same time, the program's better than it's been in that 10 plus years. And with that being the case, we got to support the program. What are some ways, and maybe outside the box ideas, for lack of a better way of putting it, to appeal to some of these young grads who may not want to buy season tickets, but obviously need to support the program through joining the Pirate Club?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic topic that you bring up, and obviously from a world economic standpoint, and even narrow down to collegiate athletics as a whole, and the ESPN contracts and how accessible it is to get a game on your phone. Obviously, there's things that you can't control, so you can't even worry about that. But if you look over the last couple decades, the Pirate Club numbers, the growth as far as membership has really been stagnant. And like you said, at some point those folks are going to age out. And I'm a Pirate Club member. I was fortunate enough to have my grandfather sign me up again back whenever I was in elementary school, middle school. He says he wanted me to get started in the Pirate Club life, but I actually was being a little too rambunctious up there in the club level with him. So that was a way for him to say, "Hey, why don't you go sit down there? I got you your own seat." So anyways, I think that there's this perception that the Pirate Club is this good old boys club and people just give bukus of money. They shell out all this big dough, when in reality, like I mentioned earlier, you can give a couple $100 a year. And it doesn't sound like much, but again, everything helps, especially with a school like East Carolina, where we need all the help that we can get. I think that something needs to go on. Obviously, you got the young grad program, but I don't even know if kids know about that these days, where you get a reduced rate for 4 years out of past graduation, and it kind of gives you a leg up into the Pirate Club. But we got to figure out a way to make it beneficial for somebody to give that income that they work so hard for, to have them choose to donate it to the Pirate Club. Now, whether it's having events solely for Pirate Club members, obviously they've got the equipment sales, maybe make it to where Pirate Club members get a first look, or possibly Pirate Club members have a day or two in advance where they can go in and pick out what they want until before it's open to the public. There's just got to be some way to get the masses behind this and get the word out. I don't know if it's a marketing problem or a perception problem, but there's got to be something new done. We're continually thinking inside the box, and whenever you do that, you're going to really limit yourself. I'm one of those guys that, again, like I said, I contribute every year, and it's one of those where it's ingrained in me. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that my grandfather pretty much pounded that into my head. Yeah, every year get into the Pirate Club. But there's I think the overwhelming majority of the folks would say that they don't have that same initiative. It's almost expected of me at this point, and I wish that other people would get behind the movement.
Definitely. There's that direct connection between Pirate Club memberships, or the lack thereof, over the last decade or so, where at one point back, during your time as a student, during the Skip Holtz years and early Ruff and McNeil years, we were selling 20,000+ season tickets. That peaked at about 23,000, and then we also peaked about 8,300 Pirate Club members. That dipped down to below 5,000. Now, fortunately, we're back up over 6,100, but still more than 2,100 below where we once were over a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, look at schools. It's easy to look at schools that are big. Obviously, the initial knee-jerk reaction is to look at the stuff going on in Chapel Hill, with the Blue Zone and everything, and all that was really done from Rams Club members. But at the same time, we don't have the alumni. We don't have the deep pockets that Carolina does. That's not a dig against our alumni. That's just calling it how it is. So on something that's more comparing apples to apples, look over at App State. Those folks, obviously their stadium's a lot smaller than ours, but people are joining the Yosef Club and going on waiting lists to buy season tickets. So reach out and figure out what is going on, what is in the water in Boone, because those people just can't get enough of it. So at some point, you can't blame everything going on in the world for it, because people are lining up out the door 4 hours, 5 hours away from where we're at. So why do we feel the need to make excuses and not do the same? You kind of get to a point where everybody's going to complain about something that happens. Well, if you don't, again, this is back on the soapbox, but if you're not in the Pirate Club and contributing on an annual basis, then you really don't have a leg to stand on, because you're part of the problem. And that's my honest opinion.
Definitely in agreement with you there. That's something that we have we've beaten the dead horse, so to speak, on our podcast, and we definitely want to continue to promote the Pirate Club, but at the same time, I'm not saying the same old, but there's a reason we're saying it, is because, like you mentioned, and I understand, streaming and television coverage wasn't what it is now, but at the same time, it was still pretty good. And during those years, coming off those back-to-back Conference USA titles, now I was pretty eager to see how much we filled a 50,000 seat stadium. And then in 2010, not only do we fill it for an NC State, but whether it was Memphis, Tulsa, whoever we
And that
played.
Tulsa game was fun.
And yeah, no doubt, Dominique Davis to Justin Jones, but we were filling the Boneyard and filling Dowdy Ficklin for all those games. So that was something that we had really never done that consistently, and that's why I thought we were taking things to another level. But
yeah, I mean, I just and the last thing I'll say about it, I just feel like there needs to be more of a relationship created between not only members within the Pirate Club, but people in the Pirate Club with the folks that run it. It's got to get old for the big donors to see a name pop up on their screen, knowing full well that they're asking for some sort of contribution. It seems like that's the only time that phone calls are made. And yeah, I get that there's meetups and stuff like that whenever we, for instance, play a baseball game in Campbell. Yeah, we have a pregame at a sports bar, and I appreciate that. I'm not trying to get down on that. But there's got to be more of a benefit provided, because again, you're asking people to give their expendable or their disposable income to this cause. And really all it is at the end of the day right now is somebody reaching their hand out and saying, hey, give me some money. And there's nothing that comes back in return. And again, I don't have any ideas specifically, but you got to get the juices flowing as far as thought process goes, and changing the way that it's perceived.
No doubt. Well said. So it's one of those things. I mean, obviously, each individual is a little bit different, and there are hundreds that will give, or if not thousands that will give, and just because they love the Pirates. But there are also plenty who are giving and maybe even a little reluctant to give, or the ones that have been members in the past, but not continuing to join the Pirate Club because they, if they're not buying season tickets or, because they live out in the Midwest or the West Coast or something where they just can't travel to Greenville every week, they don't see the benefit of it. So kind of
Yeah, you're
going
going down. Sorry to cut you off, but you're going
no,
down
go ahead.
that route. Look at all the people that go to school. I'm sure it was the same whenever you were there, but whenever I was in school, every other person seemed like they were either from Northern Virginia or New Jersey or New York up there. I mean, obviously, they're going to go back home, the overwhelming majority of them. So it's not an easy trip to make that down to Greenville. So again, you got to make it to where it still makes sense for them to join. Because if the only benefit is, oh, you get access to come to the games, well, if I'm not going to the games, then why do I need to even go down that road?
No doubt, and also in addition to the cost of trying to be competitive being higher than ever before, Pirate fans are being asked to give to more causes. Throughout this show, I've had the various ads scrolling at the bottom. In addition to the Pirate Club, I've also had teamboneyard.org, which is obviously our NIL collective. Hats off to Henry Hinton and Hank Hinton rather, for everything they do for getting that up and running. But you have Pirates Unite, you have season tickets, so there's four right there as far as things that are hats that Pirate fans are being asked to throw their money into.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I will admit I have not gone over to Team Boneyard at this point. It's on my radar. However, I'm trying to make my contributions to the Pirate Club. I definitely love what those guys are doing, though, man. Hats off to all the great work that they're doing. Even the players are showing their appreciation.
Yeah, likewise. I'm like you. I just really want to see that the IPF, the indoor practice facility, be built. It's long overdue, and actually had a former player, reach out to me yesterday or a couple days ago when there was a afternoon thunderstorm in Greenville, just saying, "Hey, it'd be nice to have that indoor practice facility." Fortunately, I think we practiced in the morning, but it's desperately needed.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think that has the ability to really put us on the map. Because if you look at our facilities, I mean, from top to bottom, our football stadium is fantastic. I was kind of whenever we got these new schools in the conference, I went around and kind of looked at their facilities, and obviously UTSA is a little bit different since they play in the Alamo Dome. I mean, that's an outlier, but these other schools, especially Charlotte, they're going to be that's going to be massive walking in the Daugherty Ficklin Stadium, and that really, I would think, gives you a leg up from a player's perspective. As at least in the first quarter, them getting acclimated to the large crowds that hopefully we've got, and then obviously baseball is world class. You got women's soccer and the lacrosse complex that's absolutely gorgeous. Softball is gorgeous. Minji's obviously it needs a facelift. I'll leave it at that. But heck, even whenever we pack Minji's out, it gets loud. So if there's a way to put lipstick on that and make those adjustments, I know that they announced this year that they were going to do some things to ramp that up. But man, if we have that indoor practice facility and then the hitting facility for baseball, I mean that's just I don't understand how we don't show up on people's radars in bigger conferences. But you really need to do it fast because you don't want to be left out in the dark this go round of realignment. You hate to think about what could happen if we don't get in with this next group.
Yep, that's all we can do is do our best to dominate where we are and win conference titles and do something we've never done. Have back-to-back 10+ win seasons. Obviously, just two of those in our history, and they came 22 years apart in '91 and 2013. And we haven't finished a season ranked since '95. And I don't say these things to dwell on it in a negative sense, but it's just reality. And we have to some of those years where we won 8 or 9 games and maybe let a game or two slip, where we could have had 4 or 5 more 10+ win seasons and just didn't get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. And, you got to call something for what it is. And there's a bunch of people out there that'll get upset whenever you do that. But just because you get upset with what I got to say doesn't make it wrong.
Before we talk about 2023 Pirate football for a few minutes, just wanted to get your background from your childhood and then as a student and since, as far as basketball and then also baseball, some of your top memories, maybe favorite players.
Oh,
We'll start with men's basketball.
Yeah, man, Musa was definitely my favorite. He was so fun to watch. Growing up, again, back with my grandfather, he bled purple and gold, and but we'd always be up anytime there was a basketball game. I'm talking midweek, weekend, anything. And my parents were just happy to get me out of the house, but loved coming up. Watching all the basketball games, and the overwhelming majority we seem to lose. But my grandfather had this knack, not only in ECU athletics, but in life in general. And he would always find a silver lining. Even if we lost, he'd be, this guy really shot well, or, I like the way that he had him passing the ball tonight. He would always find something positive to say. And, I really do think that there's that a lot of people need to have that outlook on life. Self-admittedly, again, I get a little vocal with my criticisms, and that's one of those things where I want to be able to learn from him. Anyways, I think it was the year between undergrad and grad school whenever we won the CIT with Hakeem, and I was living down in Charleston at the time, and whenever we made that run, I was coming back every game in the CIT. So, that's a 4.5, 5 hour drive from Charleston. And I did it, 4 or 5 times in 2 weeks. And I didn't bat an eye. I took off of work. I was there. It was great to see something good finally happening to East Carolina basketball. I tell you, I'm really excited about what Coach Schwartz has got working in Greenville, because, the end of the year, that momentum was there, and he's got the foundation. But I think he's got that chip on the shoulder that I keep referring to. And I think as Pirates, you kind of have to, because we're always looked down from other schools, especially in the state. Look at State, Carolina. I say Duke and Wake Forest, even though they probably don't even bother thinking about us. But we're fighting for attention. We're fighting for eyeballs in the state. I think Coach Schwartz is going to do a fantastic job here in Greenville in the next few years and get us going in the right direction. I really hope so.
Yeah, as far as Moussa Badian, we've had him on the show. That was back probably at least 3 or 4 years ago now, via Skype from France. But so many fond memories of Moussa and his days as a Pirate. I remember watching him play for the first time in person over at UNCG. And in that game, I want to say he had 5 or 6 points, but he had several rebounds and then probably blocked 4 or 5 shots. And I was like, this is not the big man that we're accustomed to getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you think greatest memories for ECU basketball, that Marquette game was unreal. And I tell you, whenever we were in that Conference USA with teams like Louisville and Cincinnati, Marquette, DePaul, or was Marquette in the conference?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I always get confused, and I didn't want to misspeak, but there's always great basketball going on. So, we got our butts kicked quite a lot, but if you look back, there was great basketball going on.
Really was, and kind of shifting gears to baseball. During your time as a student, obviously the Billy Godwin years, and I'm sure one of the highlights was in 2009 when we won the regional against South Carolina, coming back with Devin Harris having 2 big hits late in that game.
Man, and he caught that ball on the fence too.
Yes,
He was pretty much sitting on top of the fence. I was out in the jungle, and what a weekend! What a comeback, Kyle Roller. Oh, that was a team right there. Didn't we lose to Carolina in the Supers that year?
correct. Yeah, they were loaded with just unbelievable pitching staff with the likes of Alex White, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Jackie Bradley Jr. on that South Carolina? Yeah, so there was a point in time where after my senior year of undergrad, I was working as an intern for the Mudcats, and I forget who was in town, but Jackie Bradley Jr. was on their team. And before the game, I went down and I started talking to him. I was like, "Yeah, man, I went to East Carolina," and we sat there and talked shop about that weekend for probably half an hour. I mean, he was just a down to earth guy. Signed a baseball for me. Just a really cool dude. But yeah, what a great weekend for baseball in Greenville. I love baseball. East Carolina baseball is probably my biggest passion. I love football, but man, baseball is number one for me, I think.
As far as Jackie Bradley Jr., did he have any comments specifically about the jungle and the atmosphere?
Oh man, you guys were wild. He just talked about how much fun he had out there. Even though he got an earful every time that we got a chance to give it to him, he's like, "Man, you guys are passionate about your baseball." Obviously he went and saw crowds in the SEC every weekend, but he just talked about how much fun he had in Greenville, and it didn't even matter if it was our game or another game that they were playing. He had nothing but great things to say about the jungle.
And then obviously during your time since graduation over the last decade, from 2015 to present, Coach Godwin and Cliff Godwin, that is, has really taken the program to even another level, and just knocking on the door of Omaha, and it's going to happen.
Man, we're right there. I took it a step further this year, and I actually reserved a VRBO in Omaha back in February. I forget which game it was, but I was like, this is going to be the year. Obviously, things didn't work out, but Cliff, being a disciple of Coach LeClaire, he does things the right way, and obviously he says that, but he's teaching these guys to be men with high quality character. Teach them to be Christian men. That's something that's very important to me, and if that offends somebody that's listening, I'm sorry that you're offended, but I think that that's the right way to go about it. Is teaching them, you're setting them up for success after baseball, and I've got nothing but great things to say about Cliff in those regards. And obviously, again, I'm one of those guys that I'm not afraid to offer criticism, but all in all, he's got us going in the right direction. He'll get us there. I've got all the confidence in the world that he'll get us there, and I'll be there.
As will I. That atmosphere at Clark LeClaire Stadium, and then some of the professional players that were turning out. We were discussing on the show earlier tonight as we're recording this on Sunday, August the 6th. But that being the Alec Burlesons, Gavin Williams, the months of July that both of those had, and then obviously Connor Norby tearing it up in AAA.
Man, he
let off 5 games with a home run over the last 2.5 weeks.
Gosh, he's just killing it right now. And yeah, I mean, you talk about Burley. My mom and stepdad lived in Southeast Missouri for about 12 years. And so I'd go out there in the summers, and I absolutely fell in love with baseball in St. Louis. And so I'm a Cardinals fan. It's been a rough last couple seasons, especially this year, but being able to see Burley starting to turn it on, especially once he gets those consistent at bats, there's no telling what he can do. I'm just so excited for him. I can't remember if I sent you the picture or not, but my cousin actually visited his buddy out in Cleveland a few weeks back, and he went to school at Mount Olive and played soccer out there. But he said, yeah, we're going to go check out an Indians game. Obviously, they're the Guardians, but he still refers to them as the Indians. But I said, well, hopefully, you'll be able to see Gavin pitch. He's like, who's that? So I obviously filled him in, and lo and behold, the game that he was there, Gavin pitched. I wish they'd start getting that dude some run support because he's going to be dangerous.
Yeah, we talked about that as well on a recent show, just the lack of run support, and what he had an outing recently where he went 5 innings, 2 runs on 4 hits against the Astros, but the Guardians got no hit.
Yeah, maybe he can start hitting for him too.
But kind of what I want to close this out with, something we discussed off the air. Your grandfather that you referenced, Billy Mills, he's a state legislator, and he attended East Carolina back in the early and mid 50s when it was East Carolina College. But just talk about his involvement in bringing the Brody School of Medicine to ECU.
Yeah, so back in the late 60s, early 70s, he really started getting involved. He was a member of the House of Representatives in the state of North Carolina, and he was tasked with being on the committee to go around the state. I think he told me there was 3 or 4 of them on this little committee that was going around the state trying to get support drummed up. And if you've ever met my grandfather, you'll know that man has no problem talking to a stranger. There was no stranger whenever it came to Billy Mills, but he would go around and drum up support. He was able to get enough support throughout the state. Obviously, the biggest roadblock for him was the fact that there's a medical school in Chapel Hill, and he was able to overcome that and get that approval for the Brody School of Medicine in Greenville. And whenever you sit there as a college sports fan and say, oh, I don't like Chapel Hill, you think about just sports in general. That's the first thing that comes to mind to a casual fan. But whenever you dig down deeper and you start to notice how the University of North Carolina has tried in the past to kind of keep Greenville in a separate lower level, that really is where my fire comes from, because I heard all sorts of stories from him just about how difficult it was to get all those folks on board with it. But later on in life, he headed up another committee to get the community college system started all over the state of North Carolina, and eventually served on the board of governors for the North Carolina school system.
Yeah, here recently, I actually reread an article that very well done by Al Myatt on Bonesville.net from years ago about the role that Senator Robert Morgan played with Leo Jenkins as far as the achievement of university status. And so I bet your grandfather had some interesting stories about that as well.
Yeah. And again, unfortunately, he passed away a couple weeks ago. That's one of those things that, growing up, he was always just Papa to me. And, it wasn't until later on in life that I really started to find out all of his achievements. Even, getting ready for his funeral a couple weeks ago, there were things that came up. I'm like, I had no idea. And you really, you appreciate it because he was able to separate himself from his work with his family. And I mean, he was a fantastic man. And I idolize him for many reasons, but that's definitely one thing. But at the same time, I wish I would have been aware of all these things that he was a part of so that I could have genuinely asked him about it, because, man, I'm sure he had a ton of memories and a ton of stories.
I bet he could have written multiple books, no doubt.
No doubt.
Zach, really appreciate the time, spending over an hour with us. Some excellent conversation about Pirates past and present. And look forward to meeting you in person. Hopefully that will take place up in Ann Arbor here in just a few weeks.
Yeah, man, let's get a beer together. I'm all about doing it. I know you said you're going to be road tripping, and we're going to be road tripping as well. So if you let me know what kind of bourbon you want, we're gonna hit the bourbon trail on the way up there. So I'll scoop you up a bottle.
I know we'll both be staying in Ypsilanti on Friday nights, and hope to get over to Eastern Michigan to see former Pirate administrator Scott Weatherby, and then look forward to checking out the campus there as well as in Ann Arbor. But that's going to be a lot of fun seeing a venue like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. I saw that Michigan State was playing on Friday night. I'm trying to lobby for us to go over there, but we'll see how that works out. I think that's like an hour and a half drive, so that might be too much time in the car because we're going to be doing about a week-long road trip. But who knows? I hope you have a great time. Keep me posted. I'm looking forward to that trip, and I encourage anybody who's on the fence about going just to go, because that's absolutely going to be one of those trips where you're able to look back and regardless of the outcome of the game, and I'm not predetermining the outcome of the game, but that's going to be one of those memorable trips for sure.
Yeah, and that's funny you bring that up about Michigan State. I looked at that as well. And like I mentioned, since we're staying there in Ypsilanti and the noon kickoff on Saturday, we'll just go to the Eastern Michigan game on Friday night. But given that we're out of school on Monday with the Labor Day weekend, and
if I know me, I'll be having a few beverages in downtown Ann Arbor on Friday night. I won't be at the Michigan game.
Fair enough, but and I'm sure a lot of other Pirate fans will be in that same boat. But on Saturday, or maybe not Saturday after the game, we'll probably be watching other football at the hotel in Ypsilanti. But perhaps on Sunday before heading back home, who knows? Maybe we'll go to check out things in East Lansing.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, safe travels, and again, thanks so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we get a great season coming up here, but best of luck to you, man. Well, I look forward to hanging out with you in Ann Arbor a little bit. Yeah,
I appreciate all you do for the Pirates, Pirate Nation. That is Zach Daugherty, two-time East Carolina graduate and a lifelong Pirate fan. Appreciate all he does for the university and its athletics programs. But be sure to follow us on social media. You can follow the Sports Objective on X at the Sports OBJ on Instagram, and then also TikTok. You can follow us at the Sports Objective, and then on Facebook, like and follow our page, and then on YouTube, subscribe to our channel and be sure to ring that notification bell so you're alerted when we go live and upload new content. But for Pirate fan Zach Daugherty, I'm Bubba Rosenbaum. You've been watching and listening to A Pirate's Life for Me on the Sports Objective. Take care, everyone, and as always, go Pirates.
You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates.
Yeah.